Singing Dutchman Productions. Hello and welcome to Doug's Front Porch, a podcast where I get to sit down with friends, old and new, and have honest conversations. Today I welcome Scott Reagan onto the front porch, a friend that I've gotten to know rather well the last couple of years, but I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with him about some things that I've wanted to ask him and haven't had the opportunity to. So we're going to do it here on the front porch. Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Doug. Nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure. All right. I always like to start every interview off the same way. Tell the audience a little bit about what young Scott was like. What kind of things were you into as a kid? Music, sports? Did you have a big family, small family? Tell me about where you grew up, that kind of stuff.
All right. Well, I grew up in Plainfield Township, Northampton County, which is just north of Easton, south of the Poconos, and near Nazareth. I was born in Bethlehem. And so out in the country, my parents have a log house, and some land with field and forests and whatnot. So I was outside a lot in my early childhood. My parents always had chickens, and they still do. And I have an older brother, and I basically just did whatever he did. We played with Legos a lot and listened to a lot of music. My parents are always playing music, and my grandparents lived right up the street, about 2-minute walk. So that was cool. My grandfather was in World War II, and I liked to be around him a lot. And in school, I was in all the musical ensembles and everything, and I started violin in 3rd grade and did drums in 5th grade and did all that in the chorus and everything, marching band, and I played soccer, but I didn't play it in high school.
Music's going to play a lot of this conversation is going to revolve around music. So I do want to ask you this question early on. You said that, you were surrounded by music growing up. Did your parents play instruments?
My mom played a little bit of piano when she was younger, and my grandmother, my mom's mom, plays piano and writes songs actually. So I get a lot of the music from her. But my parents listened to just a lot of different eclectic music, so it was always being played.
When you say that, what kind of music do you remember from your childhood that was on? Was it just the radio, or was it the turntable, or what was it?
Well, yeah, it was the turntable early on until it broke and didn't get replaced. And they have an extensive CD collection, all kinds of stuff. The Beatles was a big one. That was my favorite when I was in elementary school, and I was probably one of the only kids that could say my favorite band was the Beatles, and at that time. And just stuff like that, classic rock, but and then like prog rock like Genesis and Peter Gabriel and Sting, which are still 2 of my all-time favorites. And then a lot of what you could call Celtic music broadly. So a lot of traditional folk music and Celtic music and stuff like that. So, and my dad does a jazz radio show and has done for almost 40 years. In fact, he has one tonight. So all kinds of stuff, and going to lots of different musical events and things like that.
You were definitely not the average kid in that sense, as far as what you were listening to and what your peers were listening to.
Definitely not.
So after high school, you have all this music background and you played a little bit of sports. When I looked this up about you, and I didn't realize this. We both have we share something in common. Well, we share a lot of things in common. One thing that I didn't realize we shared in common was that when I did my undergraduate at Lock Haven University, I dual majored in German and international studies. And when I looked you up for that, it said that you did the same. Not at Lock Haven. Where did you do your undergraduate?
Lepnin Valley.
Lepnin Valley. You were a Flying
Annville.
Dutchman. Yeah,
that's right.
But you did German and international studies as a dual major. We're a pretty rare breed there, buddy.
Yeah.
So let me ask you really quickly about that. Where's the German aspect come in? Where was did you take German in high school? What was your plan as an undergraduate? Were you thinking about teaching, or talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I actually I started Lebanon Valley as a music recording major. I did not start in German. So I only applied to a small number of schools that had music recording type majors, and I ended up going to LVC, Lebanon Valley, and by the end of the first year, I was just really enjoying my German classes. And yeah, I had taken German all through all 4 years of high school, and yeah, so I just was really enjoying the college German courses. Really great professors there, and I decided that I prefer to do the music recording after getting a glimpse into that music industry and how difficult it would be to do anything in that field. I thought, I will just switch to German. Of course, I didn't have a plan what I was going to do with German either, but I liked it a lot, and I thought I'll just do music recording as a hobby. Um, and I didn't think of being a music or a German teacher rather. Um, I didn't really have that in mind, and I kind of wish I had, but things just turn out how they're supposed to turn out. But I studied abroad in Berlin.
Okay, that was going to be my next
Uh,
question. Was it
yeah.
a semester or a whole year, or what was that?
So I did a summer program that was a month in Würzburg, where I ended up living for 2 years later on for grad school. Um, and then I lived with my dad's parents, my parents' friends in Alsace in France for a month. And then after that, I went to Berlin for a semester,
Oh, for a
for the fall
semester. Okay.
semester. Hmm.
That's a big city, man. I've been to Berlin many times. Going from Little Anvil, Pennsylvania to Berlin. How was that transition for you? Was it an easy one to make?
Yeah, I I mean I'm not a city boy. I'm a country boy, but in terms of cities, Berlin is probably my favorite that I've been to, just because of it's just so different. There's this darkness, this kind of mystique to it, and it's really cool to go out and just do things there. And so it was really fun. I went ham.
I went ham. Sounds good. So, and you already alluded to this, but this was another part I would definitely want to talk to you about. So, you referenced that, after Lebanon Valley, you got your degrees, and you decided to go the route of grad school, and you decided to do it internationally. So, walk me through that process. How did you end up in Würzburg, which is a lovely city in Germany? I've been many, many times as well. And talk to us about what your graduate degree was in, because I have some follow-up questions then about that
Yeah,
too.
yeah. So I went to the University of Würzburg, which is not too far from Frankfurt in northern Bavaria, in Franconia. And I towards the end of undergrad at Lebanon Valley, I was just looking into different routes to go, and I had looked into a bunch of different programs. And at the time, I had just recently taken an ethnomusicology, or world music class in college, and I thought this is it. Right, this is what I really enjoy and have always enjoyed my entire life. So I was looking for then schools in Germany that had programs in that field, and there weren't many. Although the roots of ethnomusicology as a field actually come from Germany. Some German scholars kind of started that in a sense. But University of Würzburg happened to be one that had this ethnomusicology slash regular musicology program for a master's. So I was like, well, I know the city already, and ended up getting accepted, and that was a whole long process, very complicated, bureaucratic German hurdles you have to jump over. So that was a lot, even just getting there. And then once you get there, there's even worse hurdles.
So, to someone that doesn't know, how would you explain ethnomusicology to somebody?
Oh, it's basically in the study of world music, or to be a little bit more detailed, the study of music in any of its cultural or social contexts, both past or present.
So, were you when you were in Würzburg, were you studying? Did you have to pick like a certain culture or a certain style of music that you wanted to concentrate on, or was it really a broad sampling of all different kinds of music? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was just very broad. Um, I mean, I know that ethnomusicology programs in the States are a lot more involved and detail oriented. This was, German free, it's free education. So it was a little bit, more laid back. Um, so it was just a broad sampling, whatever courses happened to be offered at the time. So I had a class about American music, which was really cool. Class about music in Papua New Guinea, which is very exotic, which for a lot of people, I think that's the draw of ethnomusicology, the more exotic music from different Polynesian islands and things like that, which is very interesting. But for me, it was always more just the traditional folk music that interested me. So I did have to choose a topic for my master's thesis. And for that, I did music, traditional music on the Isle of Man. And I went there twice to do field work for my master's thesis, which was about contemporary traditional Manx music and how they are creative with it and bringing it to a different, into its current form.
I'm going to come back to this question again, but when I ask it now, in your opinion, having studied this and having a degree in it, does culture influence the music or does the music influence the culture?
It's one of those extremely complex questions, Doug. The chicken or the egg
Right,
type
right,
question.
right.
Yeah, I mean, who can really know for sure? Just develops the way the kind of they probably influence each other back and forth depending on the time and the place and what's going on. And um, yeah, it's a hard one to answer, but that's why it's so interesting. That's why we study it and write about it and whatnot. Yeah.
That's right. Well, we're going to come back to that idea here in a little bit, but I want to transition. So you did your graduate work, you left Germany, you came back to the United States. Briefly talk a little bit about your current profession, what you're doing professionally right now. Not the music, Pennsylvania Dutch stuff. We're going to come to that, but with the person that pays your paycheck every
Oh
week.
yeah. Yes. So I work at Martin Guitar, CF Martin and Co. Here in Nazareth, Pennsylvania. Um, and I grew up about 5, 6 minutes drive from Martin Guitar Factory. And now I just recently bought a house in Nazareth, my wife and I, and now my commute to work is 2 minutes. So I was working. I came back from Germany, came back like from grad school, wrapped that up and everything, and was living at home with my wife. We weren't married yet, but she's a music teacher, so she was starting to teach music in the area, and I happened to get an in at Martin Guitar in the factory, so I started working at Martin Guitar in the factory at May of 2019, and I was working in finish sanding. And after about a year and a half, I moved to polishing, which is right next to finish sanding. So finish sanding is, the guitars get finished with nitrocellulose lacquer finish, so that it looks pretty and it's slightly protected. And then we sand it down so it's nice and smooth, um, super smooth. And then it gets polished if it is a glossy guitar. Otherwise, if it's satin, it goes a different way. But yeah, so then I was doing that for a while, and also training new people in finish sanding. I was the designated trainer, and then I got a job earlier this year in customer service, um, which has been really awesome. Um, Getting to move up into the office and have more exposure to meeting other people that are kind of higher up in the company and whatnot, and basically I answer the phone and I answer emails and literally any question somebody might have about their Martin guitar, a Martin guitar, other Martin instruments, ukuleles. We used to make mandolins, and you could literally get any question under the sun. Questions about coming to visit Martin guitar and things like that.
I would imagine that most people listening to this podcast probably are familiar or have heard of Martin guitars before. But if there's somebody out there listening, like, oh, maybe they're not music at all and they might not know, just so everyone
Mhm.
knows, Martin guitar is how do you describe it? Like, well, it's the oldest, it's the oldest guitar company in America.
Yeah.
Extremely famous. Everything from intro level guitars to professional level guitars. And I was going to ask you, since you've been in this new position, have you had the chance to interact with any famous, semi-famous musician yet?
Not really yet. A few years ago when I was still in polishing, because you do get some exposure when people are on tour touring the factory, um, when you're working on the factory floor, So like a couple years ago, Jimmy Buffett was standing about 20 feet away from me, um, on the factory tour. But yeah, since starting customer service, I haven't met anybody yet. Um,
No emails from Bruce Springsteen about his Martin or something like that.
sadly, Bruce doesn't, and he's one of my favorites. But he doesn't really play Martin. I mean, I can occasionally find a picture of him from the past with a Martin, but he's I believe, a Takamine uh, guy. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think if there's been anybody really. I mean, when I first started, I sanded a guitar that was for David Gilmour
Oh,
from
there you
Pink
go.
Floyd,
Yeah.
but he didn't come to the factory for us to meet him, unfortunately. Um, I'll keep you posted though if
Yeah,
anybody
please
comes
do.
in.
That'd be interesting. Yeah, and
There's a
and
lot of
as
people that play them,
oh my
so
gosh, yeah.
famous people,
And as Scott
past
said,
and present.
everyone listening to this should take a trip to Nazareth and tour the factory. And they have a store and a little museum there as well. It's worth every penny to get there to go do that. Even if you're not into music and guitars, it's a really
Yeah,
cool story and cool place. All
yeah. The
right.
museum is amazing. It just the history of it, besides music, is just incredible. I mean, we've been in the Nazareth area since 1839, and the Martin family came to New York in 1833. So that's considered the starting year of the company.
Okay, we need to transition into the part of the interview that I'm looking forward to the most. So, and the reason I got to know Scott is that Scott does a lot of things Pennsylvania Dutch, same as me, and we've recently been able to really connect over that. So, we've learned about your musical background, and you are currently in a new phase where you are writing and performing Pennsylvania Dutch music, some traditional stuff, but also originals. So I want to ask you a couple questions about this aspect of your life now. Have you always thought about doing this, or when did the transition happen, or how did it come about that you decided I want to do something? Because you have this German background, you studied in Germany, and most of my listeners know there is a difference between standard German and Pennsylvania Dutch. Not all Germans are Pennsylvania Dutch, all this kind of stuff. So, but you grew up in the Pennsylvania Dutch country, and you had Pennsylvania Dutch background. So, was this a natural transition? Was this something you'd always thought about, or how did this idea of your stage name, Blow Barrier, and this whole what you're doing right now, how did this come about? Where did it come from? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So when I came back from grad school in Germany, I was really into American music, and I was studying a lot of that and really getting into like American folk music. And then I started thinking, well, what about Pennsylvania Dutch folk music? And I was already kind of doing some research into the boomba, if you're familiar with the boomba. Big pogo stick essentially with the bells and whistles and the tambourine attached and cymbals on the top and just a big noisemaker. So I was doing some research on that. That's still ongoing. Um, and I have a boomba, of course. Grew up playing one at my grandparents' house. Um, and at the same time, I was starting to listen to some um, German music that was influencing me, to want to start to write music in Pennsylvania Dutch. Like a band called Drei Viertel Blut. three-quarter blood for whatever reason they're called that. Dreiviertelblut. They sing in Bavarian German dialect. So just hearing German music in a different dialect was really eye-opening. And I got really into them. And it was kind of my secret plan the whole time throughout 11 years or whatever of learning German, standard German. Kind of in the back of my mind the whole time I was thinking I want to learn Pennsylvania Dutch because that's what my ancestors spoke, and I grew up hearing bits and pieces of it. Um, at that point, I just said, you know what, I'm going to do it, and I got some different resources. Um, I got this book, Pennsylvania German Secular Folk Songs by Albert Buffington, and just started kind of looking through that and learning some songs. And for me, songwriting has just been something that I just do. So I just launched right into in order to wrap my head around the differences between German, standard German, and Pennsylvania Dutch. I just started writing songs like right off the bat and going like learning as I went. So I don't know. I just started doing it one day, and then basically for the past 5 years, I've just been writing in Pennsylvania Dutch. I haven't written any songs in English.
Yeah, so a couple questions about your songwriting process. Are you the kind of guy that does lyrics first and then the music comes to you, or is it the music first and then the lyrics, or does it depend?
It always depends. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I just come up with something that I really like on the guitar or whatever I'm writing on, and then go from there. And because you know might inspire certain imagery or whatever. And other times I might write like a bit of a poem type thing, and then that inspires words, and then I put music to it. Or with this Pennsylvania Dutch project I'm doing now, some I like to find old poetry in the dialect and write original music to that and kind of turn it into a song. So I've done that a couple times, which I really like.
Um, so you know you have this music background, of course. We talked a lot about it, and now you're marrying it with this ethnic background of yours, this Pennsylvania Dutch background. Um, what does it mean for you to be singing and performing in this old language that you didn't grow up speaking?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it means a lot. I wish that my ancestors could hear it, and I wish that I could talk to them in Pennsylvania Dutch and play for them because I go to Emmaus where my mom's parents live and have always lived, and I play for them, and they just close their eyes and they just soak it in and they love it, and I love playing for them. And it was really awesome getting to play for some people this year, starting to perform out this year, and just seeing people's reactions to hearing this music, whether it's original stuff that I wrote or my adaptations of traditional folk songs in Pennsylvania Dutch. And it's just, yeah, people just have been really receptive to it so far. And of course, then playing in Germany as well, that was people really enjoyed it. And yeah, for me, it's just, I don't know, it just feels like something that I'm meant to do.
Do you feel different singing in Pennsylvania Dutch than you do when you sing in English?
Yeah,
Talk to me
it
about
definitely.
that.
I mean, just speaking in German or speaking in Pennsylvania Dutch, I always have this kind of a different voice in a way. Um, and the same thing is
What do you
true
mean?
in
What do you mean by that? Talk to me about that.
even just the tone of my voice changes a lot of times when I'm speaking in German or Pennsylvania Dutch. Um, like the register, might get a little higher or deeper depending on which language I'm speaking, and and also I speak kind of slowly in English, but I speak even slower in German and Pennsylvania Dutch. Um, but in terms of, I don't know, writing songs in Pennsylvania Dutch, it gives me different opportunities to express things differently, just because of the way that I don't do like I don't write it in English and then translate it directly. It's always its own special way of wording things in Pennsylvania Dutch that's different from English. So kind of gives you a different perspective and a different voice.
How does the work that you are doing and that I'm doing, how do you think it's affecting the future?
Well,
And I'm going to add to that. I'm going to add to that. How is it? What is it doing to the present? We can't, like you said, we can't play and perform for our ancestors. Now, depending on what your faith system is, I believe that whenever I'm singing or doing anything in Pennsylvania, my ancestors are hearing it wherever they
mhm,
are. They're hearing it. Yes, I can't see their reaction and I can't hear their reaction, but in my faith, they are hearing what I'm doing. Um,
mhm,
so we can't affect the past, but what we're doing now in the present and in the future. What's your take on what you are contributing to this Pennsylvania Dutch story that's been being told for the last 300 years in our history here in America? Now we're here in 2025, 24, on the cusp of 25, and how how do you think we're affecting the now, the here and now, and also the future?
mhm. Well, I mean, it's definitely catching people's attention, especially what you do, and getting people more interested on a regular and daily basis. And I hope to contribute in that way more as I go along. I mean, I'm working on a bunch of recordings of this music, and I hope that people, will just be able to listen to it and you'll read the translations and read the background of the songs and just kind of appreciate that. And the hope is that it will inspire other people to do the same, write music or perform music in Pennsylvania Dutch, because why not? Just go out and do it. And, so hopefully just everything that we do will just inspire people, especially younger people, to just, the more that we get, the better off everything will be in terms of keeping it alive and keeping it moving forward and into the future.
Yeah, what do you say to somebody that stops you in the street and finds out what you do and says, "Oh, Pennsylvania Dutch, that's dead." What do you turn to them and say?
Well, uh, tell them that no, there's a whole community of people that are out there learning Pennsylvania Dutch and teaching Pennsylvania Dutch and using it. Besides just the Amish and Mennonites, there's other people trying to learn more about their backgrounds and what they grew up hearing, and I'll tell them, hey, well, it's not dead as long as I write songs in it and use it and teach people at work or wherever in the family, teach them different words and phrases in Pennsylvania Dutch. It's not bad.
That's right. Yeah, it's the same thing that I say too. But we do have people that push back against the work that we do, and looks at it a little bit like, why, not necessarily why are you wasting your time, but it's 2025. It's not 1932 anymore. You're not going to walk down the streets of Nazareth, the streets of Hamburg, Pennsylvania, and hear guys standing on the corner speaking Pennsylvania Dutch with each other. But just from my perspective and having heard you perform and listened to your music many times, what you bring to the table is youth, which is important to show the world that there are people that don't have gray hair that are still doing things in this language and producing stuff, and the idea that we are creating in this language that has this long history and that a lot of people do think is dead. And you're right, as long as we continue to create, whether it's music or art or writing or publishing or whatever, then that goes against the stereotype that everybody has. I mean, the stuff you are producing is, and we'll tell everybody here at the end of the episode how they can listen to your music. But the stuff you're producing is top notch. And there's been times where some of the songs that you've played and I've listened to have emotionally moved me, for sure, 100%. And I want to thank you for that. I mean, that's what we all hope as musicians. We hope that what we put out there affects people in some way or another. And I will say firsthand, at least for me personally, your music does that to me as someone that's as deep in this culture and language as I think you can get right now. Your music is wonderful. So keep doing what you're
Thanks a
doing.
lot.
Um, just You can tell, like, it's a summation of everything you've learned on this journey that you've been on, whether it was from what you learned probably on the Isle of Man, to your background, to this interaction with your grandparents, and this idea of growing up in central, in the center of Pennsylvania Dutch country. All of this is coming through in these lyrics and in these melodies and these songs that you're creating, and it has this level of authenticity that makes it something really special.
Thanks. Thanks.
So
That means a
you
lot.
get my two thumbs up, buddy. I'm telling you.
Well, I'll tell you the blow barrier. Didn't get to that. The reason I chose blow barrier is because, well, I grew up basically right at the foot of the Blue Mountain, um, basically as far east as you can be in Pennsylvania is where I'm at, and yeah, from my parents' front yard where I grew up, the Blue Mountains are there. Um, so I was searching for a special name to use for my Pennsylvania Dutch music, and I was reading. It was Thomas Brendel's collection of Pennsylvania German folklore,
Yep, green cover.
and yeah, for some reason mine's not green though. What the
Oh,
heck?
what?
It's
Yeah, it
black.
is. That's green. Is yours
Is
black?
it?
Must be
I'm
another print.
colorblind.
Oh no, it's
I'm slightly colorblind,
it's a
so who
green.
knows?
It's a green book. Trust me.
All right. Anyway, I came across something about the blue barrier, and it said the blue barrier are so dumb. So blue barrier for all you people out there means basically means somebody who lives or is from the Blue Mountain. So whether you live north of the Blue Mountain, south of the Blue Mountain, somewhere in the vicinity of the Blue Mountain, which stretches all throughout the state, or at least in Pennsylvania Dutch country. Um, so that's a blue barrier. And the book says blow barriers are so dumb that when they make a when they build a pigsty, they make a little hole for or a big hole for the big pigs and a little hole for the little pigs. And I don't know, I just kind of thought it was humorous as is per usual with Pennsylvania Dutch stuff, and just thought, oh, blow. That was the first time I heard that word, blow barrier. Oh,
Oh yeah.
perfect. I'll
So
use that.
I was interviewing my grandfather, my maternal grandfather's older sister. She was well into her 90s. My grandfather had already passed away, and my grandmother had passed away at that point. And I always had a good relationship with Aunt Esther, great Aunt Esther, and got a chance to interview and recorded her. And she had the thickest Pennsylvania Dutch accent you could have, and Pennsylvania Dutch through and through. And they grew up. My mom's side of the family all grew up in the shadow of the Blue Mountains there in northern Berks County. So I always grew up with this. I mean, I could always see the Blue Mountains as well. And
Yeah.
I was saying, tell me a little bit about my great grandmother. I never got to meet her. She died way before I was born. We have pictures of her, and she was a really short little old Dutch lady. And my great aunt said, well, she always used to say, "Ich bin just ein dummer Blaubarrier." That's what she would say. I'm just a little dumb Blue Mountain person.
That's how I
So
feel.
this concept of the poor people that grew up in the lived on the edge of the Blue Mountain, really, and they really hurt. They really they were tough on themselves, I guess.
Yeah. But I was telling people when I was performing this year, I would tell them that little joke in Pennsylvania Dutch that I just said, and I would tell them, but the Blue Mountains are really wide. So where I'm at doesn't necessarily mean that we're done there. It might be those western.
Northern Berks
Yeah.
County. Those
Yeah.
people, yeah. Scott, man, we could talk forever about this stuff, and I'm sure we will over in the future. But for this episode, I mean, I really appreciate it. And before we move into the last part, if somebody wants to listen to your music, what's the best way for somebody to do that?
Well, right now I'm just compiling as many different videos as I can from my performances this year in Pennsylvania and in Germany. And Michael Werner's putting a bunch of videos from my Germany tour up on YouTube. So everything's just on YouTube at the
Yeah,
moment.
I will link your YouTube channel in the show notes so people can click right on it and hear some of the stuff. And I would imagine at some point we're hoping on putting an album out or
Yes,
multiple
yeah,
albums. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
yeah. I had hoped to have it out by now, but you know how it goes, and
Oh, I do.
just it was a busy year, so unfortunately got delayed, and moving, buying a house and moving and all this other stuff that happened. So yeah, I really want to get stuff out when I can, but I'm not going to rush it because I'm a perfectionist when it comes to recording stuff. So I hope that I can at least get some things out.
Chris and I have been working on a second album for 5, 6 years now, and it's the same thing. We always say it's like this is the year we're gonna finish it. This is the year we're gonna do it. And we said it just the last time we were together. I said 2025. This is it. This is the year we're putting that album out.
Yeah.
And we said absolutely this
I
is it. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I kind of shot myself in the foot because I kind of organized a couple different albums, planning ahead, and they're themed so that the first one I wanted to release is a spring theme. Well, I'm not gonna be able to get it done by this spring, so we'll see what I end up doing. But there was spring theme album, summer theme album, and so on and so forth. But we'll see what happens. Well, it'll get out there eventually.
It will. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Scott, we close every interview the same way with 10 quick questions, nothing that's too personal, but just a way for us to get to know you a little bit better. So here we go. Scott, number one, what is your morning drink of choice?
Water.
Are you a coffee drinker at all?
I am. I don't drink it every day though.
Oh,
I don't. Yeah.
how do you do that?
I don't know. I don't know. I've
And
never.
you lived in Germany and you didn't turn into a
Yeah.
daily coffee drinker?
No.
Okay.
I just never felt afflicted by that. The need to drink coffee every day. I love it, but yeah, I don't drink it every day. Sometimes I'll drink coffee in the morning. Sometimes I'll drink tea in the morning, black
Okay.
or green, and sometimes I don't drink any caffeine
Okay.
and just load up on water.
Kudos to you and your healthy bladder. That's great. Question number two. This is probably going to be tricky for you given your background, but who is a go-to musical artist or group?
Hmm. Well, I can't just name one, Doug.
I
It's
know,
impossible.
I know.
But I'll just ramble off the band.
Yes.
So I always listen to one artist, like I binge them,
Yep.
and then I go on, and then I eventually, I move on to one of my other favorite artists, or if I'm lucky, I just discover something new.
Yeah.
But I'll just rotate through my favorite artists and just binge them. The only time I don't do that is if it's like a playlist on shuffle of like 80s synth pop or something. And then it's like, okay, anything goes. But okay, the band, Robbie Robertson solo material, I love. Um, Sting is one of my all-time favorites, his solo stuff. I also love the Police. Bruce Springsteen, especially the early stuff. I recently discovered this guy that I really like named Grant Lee Phillips.
Okay.
He's awesome. Really into him. He's been very inspirational for me lately. Great singer-songwriter named John Hyatt. He's awesome. I mean, Pink Floyd. I love Pink Floyd. I've always loved Pink Floyd and the Beatles, and got really into Tears for Fears like 2 years ago. Their whole discography. So I love that. 70s Genesis, early 80s Genesis. Love that. Peter Gabriel, all of his stuff. Early U2, David Bowie.
And the list goes
listen.
on and on.
I don't listen to much newer stuff. If I have to listen to newer stuff, it's from the 2000s usually, like
Okay.
Arctic Monkeys, The
Yeah.
Killers,
Yeah.
stuff like that. So I listen to mostly older music.
That's all right.
And then of course some German bands. That one of them, which I mentioned earlier. And
Yeah, I
Rio
wasn't.
Reiser.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't familiar with the Dreiviertel Blut. I'll have to check them out.
Yeah,
That's
I really
one I'm
like
not
them.
familiar with. Okay. All
Mhm.
right. Sounds good. Number three, what movie can you watch over and over again and it never gets old?
Well, everybody that knows me knows that my favorite movie is Willow. 1980s.
Yes.
Val Kilmer is the most badass warrior swordsman that there ever was, and yeah, it's just fantasy adventure. So
Yeah,
I would
and
have to say Willow.
Yeah, no, that's great. I don't think I've seen that since I was a kid, but I remember the movie. I know the movie. Holy cow, that's a deep cut for
Yeah,
this day and age.
I have a lot of inside jokes with guys at Martin Guitar because they're just like you. They only saw it when it came out. Of course, I
Yeah.
wasn't born quite yet when it came out, but I was introduced to it when I was young, and yeah, it's one of my one of my go-tos.
No, that's fine. That's fine. All right, number four. What's the last thing that you read?
Well, I haven't had much time for reading in the last several years, or I haven't made time for reading. Um, but I read maybe at the beach or something a year or so ago. I read this book called Lord Brocktree, which
Okay.
is a childhood favorite of my brother and I. Are this series called Redwall,
Okay.
um, written by this guy from Liverpool, um, Brian Jakes, and it's like fantasy medieval, like it's all like woodland creatures that
Okay.
are like have swords and stuff. So,
Yeah.
um, and right now, actually, I just kind of got into a little reading mood, and I'm reading the Asabe and Sabina radio
Ah.
scripts. So
Uh-huh.
those are really cool. And I'm also reading some short stories by J.R.R. Tolkien,
Ah.
which I'm really enjoying.
Yeah, I'm
I
sure.
like
Sounds
I
good.
like fantasy.
Yeah, I got you. I got you. Number five, what's your favorite pizza topping?
um, I, sometimes I really like pepperoni.
Yeah.
Other times I could go for a sausage.
Okay. What
But
about both of
I'm
them
down for anything.
combined would
Both of
be
them
good.
combined, that's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah, yeah. Maybe some like yeah. Sometimes I really like broccoli on there too. I mean,
Ah,
hey, it depends on my mood, but
sounds good. Okay.
yeah,
Sounds good.
I like meat and I like vegetables.
Yeah. All right, laying on the beach or going for a hike?
Beach.
Okay. You've invited me over for dinner. What are you making?
Well, I'd have to ask my wife.
Okay.
I'm not much of a cook, Doug, but I can make a mean grilled cheese.
Okay. I like grilled
I
cheese.
can make
Hey,
a grilled cheese, and we can have some potato chips, and
perfect.
and I'll slice up some pear. I love
Yeah.
some pear and
Hey,
grilled cheese. So
that's
I'm a
fine.
simple man. I like simple foods,
That's good. All
which
right.
makes it all the more special when I go out to eat or something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What is a dream vacation destination for you?
Well, I've been to the Baltic coast of Germany once, and it was awesome. I'd love to take
Mm,
my wife there. And also go back to the Isle of Man and Ireland and Scotland and bring my wife.
yeah. Beautiful places in the world for sure.
Hmm.
What's something that you're afraid of?
Anything bad happening to my wife or my family?
That's a rational fear for sure. Last question. What job, other than one that you've had, would you love to have?
Well, the dream was always to be a recording and performing musician. Um, but the reality is that's just going to be a hobby, which is
Yeah.
cool. Um, Other than that, I kind of wanted to be a professor of some sort. Um, I'll tell you what, when I went to study ethnomusicology, I was like, I'm going to be the Indiana Jones of music. That was it. So, uh, didn't really happen, but sort of in a way.
No, not yet.
We're kind
Not
of
it
going
didn't.
that route. We'll
It
see.
didn't happen yet.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you gotta let it go sometimes and let the road take you where it needs to
Just
take you.
I'll
You
just
never
be the
know.
Pennsylvania Dutch Indiana Jones.
Yeah, just get a good fedora and start have the look at least so you're ready when the time comes.
Well, I got this hat that I got in Germany. I can wear this. It's good enough.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go. Perfect. Yeah, you got the look already, and just sling that Martin guitar over your shoulder and off you go.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
Scott,
right.
it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show and getting to pick your brain about a couple things. I will put a link to the YouTube channel that you mentioned so people can hear your music, and I look forward to many great things coming from those guitars of yours and those lyrics that you're writing up. And I can't wait to the day that we're on stage together and get to do some
Yeah,
collaborative stuff. That would be so much fun. I look forward to it and our
me
continued
too.
work together with other Pennsylvania Dutch things. Thank you again for the work you're doing. It is so important. I can't stress that enough. Your creativity, everything. Just keep doing what you're doing. And I see great things coming. And
I
thanks again
will.
for coming on the show,
Thanks.
Scott.
Yeah, thanks so much, Doug. It's been great.
Thank you for listening to Doug's Front Porch, a conversational podcast with your host, Doug Maidenford. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Your ratings and reviews will help others find the show. You can follow along on Facebook, X, and Instagram. Just look for Doug's Front Porch. If you would like to financially support our endeavors, there's a Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. I thank you in advance for any contributions. please feel free to tell all your friends about the show, and I'll see you all next time on My Front Porch.